Let's take a look at one of my favourite cards from Rebel Clash. It's Cinderace VMAX. Welcome back everyone to more from the Sable Eyes. My name's Mitch and today we're going to be taking a look at Cinderace VMAX again on the channel, this time on PDCGO. I think this is a really cool deck. I really like Welder based decks and this one is a doozy. There's lots of interesting new stuff in it. If you want to check it out, it's in the description. We've got a picture coming up right now as well. It's a pretty solid one. I'm looking forward to playing with it. And it is obviously based around Cinderace VMAX. This card has two really good half-hitting attacks. It's going to be able to consistently put on pressure to your opponent's Pokemon. Counter does 30 plus however much energy, how much damage has been taken on the previous turn. So we can potentially deal something like 260 damage from if we're playing against something like Zacian V, maybe even more if they have already utilized their GX attack. So we can get some big hits off and take one-shots with it. And we've got a really reliable two-hitting attack in Max Pyro Ball with 170 base damage, plus an extra 20 from a burn, which could potentially stick around. A minimum of 190 damage is pretty strong. 320 HP as well is super high, so this card is not going anywhere very quickly. You're going to need to one-shot it to get it out of the active, and if you don't, then counter is always an option. I really like Cinderace VMAX, and the reason that, well, part of the reason that I like it is I think that Cinderace V is actually one of the better V cards floating around. Field Runner is a good ability, giving a Pokemon free retreat is always positive, and Crimson Legs for 140 damage, 3 energy is a pretty solid generic attack. It reminds me actually of one copy of Heatran-GX. We've got Steaming Stomp for 130, and this card has one of those big explosive GX attacks. Well, it's 50 damage, so it can be anywhere up to 350 damage realistically with 7 energy on this particular Pokemon. We can get them there by using Burning Roads, so we can get those big one-shots if we need them. Another way that we can get a one-shot is by using Turtonator with Explosive Jet. We talked about how Cinderace VMAX's HP is so high. Right, we're not going to get knocked down. It means that we've got more energy in play at all times. So Turtonator is a really strong option to potentially come in and close out a game for you, taking 2 or 3 prizes. Our final attacker in the deck is Ninetales V. Nine-tailed Shapeshifter is a really cool attack. I really like the idea of hitting an ADP for 150 damage and accelerating energy onto my side of the field. That seems really good. And it's got plenty of other uses as well. And Flamethrower for 180 is a relatively good attack, though it is a 4 energy cost. So chances are you're probably not going to use it, but it is an option for you if you need it. The rest of the deck is designed around getting those Pokemon attacking as frequently as possible, and it's got all of the staple Firebox trappings. It's got 3 Jirachis for its core engine, along with 2 copies of the Dedenne-GX, a little thinner than we used to have them in Firebox decks, but we don't have that Victini Prism and all of those energy anymore, so it's not nearly as bad, not nearly as clunky with fire energy, so we don't need to burn through them so quickly. And we also have the Mind Report Mewtwo and Oranguru supporter combo to get those welders back. We've got 4 welders in the list, so we want to get them back as frequently as possible. This is a combination that you've probably seen quite a bit. It's a very strong one, and I would definitely recommend testing it out if you haven't already. The rest of the list is items and trainers, obviously, a doi. Right, we've got a few good Pokemon search options, Quick Ball, 4 of, obviously, and 3 Pokemon Communication to shuffle some of the Pokemon into the deck if we don't need them. That's the only way, by the way, we can search out Cinderace VMAX, so we need Pokemon Communication in order to do that, so make sure you remember. One way you can get a Pokemon in your hand, though, is you can always just use one of our 4 copies of Scoop Up Net to bring a Pokemon from the field back into your hand, and then you can shuffle it away. So it's not nearly as bad as it might seem, but definitely worth remembering. We also have 1 copy of Great Catcher for Gust in this list. No Ninetales, we've opted to not use it. We've got Great Catcher and 2 copies of Boss's Orders, so hopefully that's enough to get the knockouts that we need. But if it's, if we're going to find ourselves in a pinch, Obviously, Great Catcher is pretty strong. When it comes to energy, we can search it out with Fiery Flint, we can recover it with Fire Crystal, and we can search it with Giant Hearth as well. Once we've got it in our hand, we can use Heat Factory to burn it away and draw some more cards. You've all seen these things before. We've got 3 Switch and 2 Escape Board. They go with Jirachi quite nicely. And we've got a Tool Scrapper as well. This is in because, you know, those frying pans are really annoying. A big problem for me, so I want to get rid of them so that I make that matchup relatively free. Anything else is a bonus. We've already mentioned Welder as our key supporter, but because we've got Mewtwo as a potential option, and because we've got Cinderace VMAX with so much HP, we don't necessarily have to play Welder every turn. We want to, but we don't have to, which means we can sometimes play one of our 2 copies of Mallow Lana, which is obviously very strong. We can heal damage off of our Cinderace VMAX whilst attacking with a fresh attacker, or potentially even switching back in and using the same Cinderace again. So we can potentially use that to heal off some damage, and we also have the aforementioned Boss's Orders to Gust if we need it. Rounding out the list, we have 12 Fire Energy. It's probably a little bit low, although it's the most that I could realistically fit in the deck without making it without making it ridiculously inconsistent. I think this is a pretty solid list. There's some tweaking to be done. It's not perfect by any stretch. It's kind of similar to the one that we played back when we had hard copy cards, but this one's pretty solid, and if you want to play a fun Welder deck, this is probably a good option for you on the ladder. So now that we're here, we'll see what we're up against. We've got Metal on the opposite side of the field, so this might be a decent matchup for us. We'll go first, even though we probably want to play Welder. I think Cinderace means that we can utilize our first turn a little bit more efficiently, so we can potentially attach turn 1 and then evolve into Cinderace and use counter as well. There's a Cobalion in the active. That's very interesting. This is not a great hand. It's okay, but not amazing. We've got a Quick Ball. We could potentially find the Dedenne. I don't think we realistically need Ninetales in this one. If we are playing up against metal guys, then we should be able to deal with it with just Cinderace VMAX. That should be enough. Alright, so let's see. Oh, I think we can probably hold on to this Heatran now. We don't need to play it, because, I mean, worst case scenario, we can search for the second Dedenne next turn. We probably do want to attach an energy, although there is the theory that we could just hold on to it. If we top deck Welder and we don't have energy, I'm going to be upset, but I would prefer to have it in play, because then I can at least Welder onto the active and we will be able to attack. That's going to be our turn. Hopefully we can get ourselves into something a little bit better than what we currently have. Very awkward hand, this one. No Jirachi, which is disappointing, but we had 3 in the deck, so it's not realistic to see it every single time. And it looks like we're up against Luca Metal here, so we are probably going to get use out of that Tool Scrapper, because there is absolutely 100% guaranteed to be a frying pan in this one. Oh, it looks like Copperaja V, so we could be into like a defensive metal box type deck. I think this is a really cool idea, especially since lots of those fire box decks are off of the ladder at the moment. Although we could see some success in Limitless 3 with them, there is potential for that. Our hand there, getting Marnied into this, is pretty much the same as the same hand as what we had before, so I'm not super upset. Get the Pokémon for the Jirachi, we can shuffle that away and get a Dedenne, which our opponent is currently doing. They'll be able to draw a fresh 6 cards, and I'm not sure what they're necessarily looking for, just digging through cards to try and make it a little bit more awkward for us to deal with their turn next turn. They're probably going to use Luca Metal to get rid of our energy next turn, which would really suck, but as long as we've got access to Welder, we shouldn't have any problems at all. They're going to go with Intrepid Sword here. Probably just going to leave this Cobalion in the active, which is fair enough. We've got a second fire. I think the best thing to do, we'll probably Pokémon away this Jirachi, grab ourselves the Dedenne. The question is, do we attach before we Dedenne or not? I kind of think like it's almost worthless to not attach. We'll attach to the active. That means we can potentially get some damage off if we get a VMAX, but we don't. We actually get into 0 cards here that are useful at all. We've got a Jirachi, which is good. I guess we can use Giant Hearth to search out some energy. We've got the Tool Scrapper. I think I have to get rid of Heat Factory here. Next turn, I'm going to have manually powered up this Cinderace, so that's a positive. But in the meantime, we can Jirachi, and we miss a Welder again there, which is very upsetting. We've got the Tool Scrapper, which is great. That means that if our opponent does play down a Frying Pan onto this Luca Metal when it goes into the active, we'll be able to get rid of that Frying Pan. I think we're going to have to just pass here. If our opponent chooses to knock out the Jirachi, they do. But hopefully we've got ourselves into a position where we can just attack next turn and take a knockout. We've got Boss's Orders, so if the situation doesn't change, we can take a knockout on the Luca Metal. We've got 140 damage coming in. Chaotic Swell is very frustrating, although we've only got one stadium left, so it's not the end of the world. I think we're just lucky that we're in a matchup where we can afford to brick a little bit here, because if we were up against something that was a little bit quicker, we'd probably be in a lot of trouble. Little Saucer coming down there, going to probably start attaching to that Copperaja, because the VMAX is really cool. Like, if you haven't had a look at Copperaja VMAX, then definitely do look at it. It is such an interesting card. It's got so much HP. It's such a chunky boy with a big nose. And we're going to get Marnied again, so we are out of a pretty solid hand here. We're into an okay one, but I much preferred it when we had that Tool Scrapper. Meant that we were able to just take the knockout once it happened. And the worst part is now it's on the bottom of the deck. There's no way for us to recover it. They're Intrepid Sorting again, so we are in a spot where we could potentially get the Welder off, which is good. We want to get that Welder going. The Intrepid Sword looks like it's getting some energy here. It's just a matter of whether or not they're being attached to that Zacian. He managed to get two! Oh my goodness. This is a frightening situation. And a Fire Crystal. Man, I'm not enjoying this. I'm going to Fiery Flint. I'll probably get rid of the Giant Hearth. I think the Switch can go as well. We don't really need it. We'll grab 4 energy here. In this situation, it means that we can Jirachi with the active. If we miss Welder, which we didn't, it was hidden at the back there, so we only just managed to get it. If we had have missed Welder, we would have been able to get ourselves another opportunity to Jirachi, so that's fantastic. We go into the fresh Cinderace, because now we've got a second powered up. We'll scoop up the Jirachi, put the Cinderace in the active, probably play that Jirachi down again, and now we're taking our first couple of prizes. We're going to take 2 on this Cobalion. Now, we did manage to get back into that Tool Scrapper, so if things go wrong, if our opponent does get rid of our energy, we have a Cinderace on the bench, we can retreat for free, we're going to Tool Scrapper, we're going to take a knockout on the Luca Metal, so that's pretty good. Although our opponent has disrupted our hand pretty much every turn that they could, so if it does happen that way, that we find ourselves losing this Tool Scrapper again, then that is the way that it is. They've promoted Zacian here, so maybe they're committing to just taking a knockout, and fair enough too, that Cinderace is pretty powerful. It's already got pretty much all that it needs attached to it. So it looks like they're going to go for the Brave Blade. The question is, are they going to get themselves another Marnie? If they do, then we are going to be in a bit of trouble, because that Tool Scrapper is going to go back to the bottom of the deck again, and there's only so much that we can realistically do. There is a Marnie. That's so frustrating. Okay. Probably could have played the Tool Scrapper that turn, although we didn't want things to get worse for us. There's another Frying Pan. I was about to say, hey, at least we can attach him Boss's Orders, but no. The Frying Pan comes down on the Luca Metal. Now we're in such an awkward spot, because the Brave Blade's going to knock out this active Cinderace, and we're going probably into Jirachi with nothing here. We don't have access to Dedenne. We don't have access to a VMAX. We've got an Oranguru, okay, so potentially we could get ourselves a decent attack off, but I'm really concerned here. What do we actually want to achieve? I mean, best case scenario, we could go for that Tool Scrapper again. We could Pokecom the Oranguru, shuffle the deck, and then hope that we get into the Tool Scrapper, but that doesn't seem very likely. It's like a 1 in 5 chance. I think we're going to have to, though. There's only so much we can realistically do. I don't like it. And if we do get the Tool Scrapper as well, then it means that we're not going to be able to retreat. So we'll have to get like a Welder onto this Cinderace VMAX, and then potentially... Oh, it all just seems very difficult at the moment. Stellar Wish, we'll see what we get. We've got a Welder. I think we need to take the Welder because we've got the energy, we've got the Fire Crystal in hand, so we can draw some cards. And now it just comes down to whether or not we get really, really lucky and have that Tool Scrapper. We could get the... I want the Scoop Up Net. I want it really bad, but I don't think that it does anything for us. I think we just have to Welder and hope. We're gonna need Switch and Tool Scrapper if we want to take a knockout this turn. So we'll have to be incredibly lucky. We will Welder. I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna stick 2 onto a Dedenne. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, cool. Well, you know how I was saying we need to be incredibly lucky? We were. So we've got Tool Scrapper, we've got Scoop Up Net. This is brilliant. We can attach to the Cinderace, we can Tool Scrapper, get rid of 2 of these frying pans. It's just a matter of which one is the one to get rid of on the bench. I'm not sure. I think it's going to be the Luca Metal because they are likely to promote that next to try and get rid of all of our energy. So we'll get rid of the active and then the Luca Metal. That will mean that we've got prizes potentially mapped. We can max Pyro Ball, take a knockout, and take 2 prizes. Hopefully they're good ones. We've got a Mewtwo, which is excellent. Means we can get a Welder on top of the deck, and we get a Fire Energy. So we're going to lose our energy here on Cinderace. If we manage to find Welder, then we can potentially win the game next turn. But if we don't find Welder, then we're still going to be able to put a lot of pressure on because we've got Boss's Orders in hand, and eventually we're going to power up an attacker. And remember, of course, we've got the Dedenne on the bench with 2 energy. At any point, Heatran could become live, and Luca Metal has 260 HP, which is the perfect amount. So we're in a pretty good spot here. We got really, really lucky to get that Scoop Up Net and the Tool Scrapper, which, hey, that's not going to happen every time, but it happened this time. So it was the 3rd time we happened to get that Tool Scrapper as well. So I'm pretty happy with that. I have to say, but my opponent looks to be powering up their Copperaja quite nicely now. They've got 4 energy on it, which is a lot. Here comes the Full Metal Wall. That's going to be quite frustrating. Now that Heatran play is out of the question, but we do have Mallow and Lana, so what we could potentially do is we could just Mallow and Lana into Jirachi and then utilize that particular supporter. I think that's probably an okay thing to do. I can put the Welder on top with the Mewtwo. There's no consequence there. I maybe just leave it because worst case scenario, I can't get the Jirachi out of the active. And next turn, they're either going to Mani me into a Welder and some cards, or I'm going to Welder and attach to this Cinderace. So we're going to be fine. Whatever happens, we're in a good spot. The worst thing possible would be a big hit from this Copperaja V. If they turn this into a VMAX, it's going to be awkward, but they can't get out of the active unless they have a switch, because they don't have the energy on that Luca Metal just yet. They're playing down Zacian here. So Copperaja VMAX already in the discard pile, so I guess that's good for us. And the fact that they're sitting there not really doing anything much is also positive. I don't know here. I don't know. I think we're going to be okay. Here comes another Metal Saucer. I feel like that's like the last one. Oh my goodness. And an Intrepid Sword. Okay, so we win the game. How good is that? They're just giving us the game. We put the Welder on top. We got 2 energy in hand. We're going to max Pyro Ball. We're going to take a knockout on the active. Everything's worked out for the best. I have no idea how it happened, but we did it, and that's all that matters. Max Pyro Ball, 310 damage. That's going to be a knockout. 2 prizes, they're ours. We somehow stole ourselves a game. I don't know how we can say that we stole a game up against something that we should probably be beating most of the time, but we had Cinderace VMAX ready to take those one-shots on the big metal tag teams in that Luca Metal deck, and we managed to get across the line. I would love to show this deck off again, and I think we probably will. We've got streams and stuff that we occasionally get along and do, so if you want to check that out, you're more than welcome to do so. The deck list is in the description, so you can have a look at it if you'd like. And if you did enjoy the content, then you might consider subscribing and click the button that's just over here. I missed the button. Over here, there are some videos that YouTube thinks you'll like and a playlist down the bottom for more of our content. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter for more from us. And from Sableyes, thank you very much for coming along. We really appreciate it. We'd like to see you here, and we'll see you next time for more from the Sableyes. Bye.